Yes, so in the suttas that we have studied, we have already studied the basic teaching on the Buddhist ethics, okay? But in this particular text, the more focus is on monastic practice. You know, as a monastic member, how serious you have to be with regard to your practice of virtue. Okay, so that is one thing that is very much focused in this section, especially because, as I have mentioned earlier, this entire text, Visuddhimagga, focus on this specific path to liberation by way of, you know, sīla, samadhi, and paññā. So this is, in a way, this represent a very strict and also straight path towards liberation. Once you take up the path, you have to be serious enough to continue your practice in the path. Okay. Otherwise, as a common individual, you can carry out a certain virtues, you know, just to keep yourself in the practice of Dhamma. You are not yet a serious practitioner to obtain liberation, right? You are not in the path yet. So that probably could be said to be kind of a preliminary stage. You just start your journey. You are just becoming familiar with the teaching and with the practice. Okay. And as I mentioned earlier also, the idea is that you take up a certain practice from your guru, your teacher, or during the time of the Buddha, these monastic members, when they get ordination, they get a certain teaching from the Buddha, and after that, they go to forest or rukkamula, root of a tree in the forest, in an empty hut, to carry out their practice, right? Because that is their sole purpose, to progress in the path. But here, our purpose is to complete the course and complete BA program, get a certificate, right? So the idea is like that. You take up, you listen to a certain teaching, you get a certain teaching from a master, and then to carry out that, you go to a certain place and carry out your practice, right? Once you feel that you are really established in the teaching, in the practice, after that, when you come out of forest, you come in the society, you can deal with situations in society mindfully. But if you just start your practice while living in the family, in the society, you are not going to progress very much. That is the idea. Now, before the break, Grace was reading this passage, a classification of virtue into two types in terms of good behavior and that of the beginning of the life of purity, that is holy life or brahmacharya, holy life. Now it says that good behavior means, of course, good behavior, right? So that is understood. And this is a term for virtue other than that which has livelihood as aid. Okay, so livelihood is different from this good behavior. This is just referring to your behavior. Later on, we come to know that it is actually referring to the minor virtue, chula sīla. We studied this chula sīla when going through the Samayapala Sutta, if you remember. How many of you remember this sutta, Samayapala Sutta? Fruits of recluseship. It all started with the king's thought of meeting a certain recluse, and then he asked a question to different recluses, including the Buddha, with regard to the fruit of recluseship. And while presenting Buddha's answer, he came up with this division of Chula Sīla, Majjhima Sīla, and Mahasīla. Minor or lesser rules, medium rules, and higher rules, if you remember. So it says that when it is talking about good behavior, it is particularly referring to the lesser or minor rules. Okay, you can go back and see what are these minor rules. It is the initial stage of the life of purity consisting of the path, thus it is that of the beginning of the life of purity. This is a term for the virtue that has livelihood as aid. It is the initial stage of the path because it has actually to be purified in the prior stage too. Hence it is said, but his bodily action, his verbal action, and his livelihood have already been purified earlier. So it is referring to bodily action, verbal action, and his livelihood. Now for a monastic member, livelihood is different. We will come to the discussion of livelihood later on in detail, but if you remember the Samayapala Sutta explanation, the livelihood for a monk is that a monk has to survive on people's offering, right? And he cannot expect more. He cannot, give them a particular hint, right? And he cannot follow any other ways of living. For example, reading palms, right? Foretelling the future and so on. He cannot, practice any of these practices to earn his food, his requisite. That would be wrong livelihood. The training precepts called lesser or minor rules, especially are the good behavior. The rest are that of the beginning of the life of purity. Yeah, so this is particularly explained with reference to the Samayapala Sutta. The first section is referring to the good behavior, and the remaining two sections are said to be beginning part of the Brahma Vihara, holy life. Or what is included in the double coat. Double coat here refers to the coat of bhikkhus and the coat of bhikkhunis. Those are some Vinaya rules. Is that of the beginning of the life of purity, and that included in the duties set out in the Kandakas. Kandakas of Vinaya. These are also Vinaya text. It's that of good behavior. Through its perfection, that of the beginning of the life of purity comes to be perfected. Hence it is said also that this bhikkhu shall fulfill the state consisting in the beginning of the life of purity without having fulfilled the state consisting in good behavior. That is not possible. So first you have to be established in good behavior, then you proceed to the practice of Brahma Vihara, then only you progress in the path. So it is of two kinds, as that of good behavior and that of the beginning of the life of purity. So if you understand this in terms of the classification of virtue presented in the in the Samayapala Sutta, I think you would understand it better. In the third dyad, virtue as abstinence is simply abstention from killing living things, etc. The other kinds consisting in volition, etc. are virtue as non-abstinence. So it is of two kinds, as abstinence and non-abstinence. So there is just a simple explanation. Abstinence in the sense that you avoid being engaged in evil activities, unwholesome activities, right? And the other kind is that consisting in volition, etc. Virtue as non-abstinence. I think it is referring to, cultivating good qualities, wholesome qualities. You avoid something, you uphold something. In the fourth dyad, there are two kinds of dependence. Dependence through craving and dependence through false views. Nisaya is the word here. Okay. Herein that produced by one who wishes for a fortunate kind of becoming thus. Through this virtuous conduct, I shall become a great deity or some minor deity. So this is your wish, and that is why you carry out your practice with this wish. Based on your practice, based on your preservation of virtues, you want to become a great deity, deva, or some minor deity. It is up to you. What do you want to be? A great deity or minor deity? That is dependent through craving. That produced through such false view about purification as purification is through virtuous conduct, is dependent through false view. Yeah, but if you carry out those practices with such kind of view, and you think that that is going to lead you to purification, that is a wrong view. Okay, because when you have such kind of mentality as craving and so on, you are not really going to get purification. That is based on wrong view. But the supramundane and the mundane, that is the prerequisite for the aforesaid supramundane, are independent. So it is of two kinds, as dependent and independent. So the distinction between supramundane and mundane is also explained in the same manner. Mundane means lokiya, supramundane lokuttara. Lokuttara means going beyond lokiya, right? Worldly and what do you call opposite of worldly? That is supramundane. Yeah. Otherworldly, not otherworldly, lokuttara. Worldly refers to the entire samsara, mundane. So you practice a certain virtues, but that function only within this mundane world. Lokiya, they are lokiya because you have lokiya expectations, mundane expectations, mundane cravings. Everything is mundane. You are practicing a certain teaching because you want to be rich, or you are performing a particular rites because you want to get a good job, or even you want to be born in heavenly world or Brahma world. But all these things are within this mundane world, right? Supramundane means going beyond that. You want to destroy your idea of atta. You want to be free from wrong view. You want to be free from the idea of atta, craving, all kinds of unwholesomeness. Finally, you even lose your identity. You are no more you. I am no more me. Okay, there is no you and me. You go beyond that. You destroy your identity because all these identities are connected to our views, false views. Okay, you become free from these false views. That is supramundane. In the sixth dyad, temporary virtue is that undertaken after deciding on a time limit. Okay, you practice a certain virtue for a short time, for a period of time only. For example, as I mentioned earlier, you enter into the sangha, take up a certain virtue for few months, and then you leave. Right? That is just for a short time. So that is, in that sense, it is temporary. Lifelong virtue is that practiced in the same way, but undertaking it for as long as life lasts. In fact, I think it could be as long as you attain nibbana. It could be several lifetimes. That is lifelong practice. So twofold in terms of temporary and lifelong. In the sixth dyad, the limited is that seen to be limited by gain, fame, relatives, limbs, or life. The opposite is unlimited. Now here you have further explanation. What does it mean by limited virtue and unlimited virtue? What is the virtue that has a limit? There is virtue that has gain as its limit. There is virtue that has fame as its limit. There is virtue that has relatives as its limit. There is virtue that has limbs as its limit. There is virtue that has life as its limit. What is the virtue that has gain as its limit? Here, someone with gain as cause, with gain as condition, with gain as reason, transgresses as training precept has undertaken. That virtue has gain as its limit. See, so you are practicing a virtue, but for a certain gain, you break a certain precept. For a certain gain, you know, if you break your precept, that is explained to be virtue which has gain as its limit. And you are following a particular way of living, you are following virtuous life, but for fame, you know, you are affected by the fame and you break a rule because of the idea of fame. So in that case, fame is the cause, fame is the condition, fame is the reason that you transgress a training precept. Okay? Relatives as the cause, or relatives are the condition. Limbs. Limbs probably referring to your bodily body parts. Limbs as cause, limbs as condition. You are probably affected in some ways with your body parts that you have to break precept. So limbs, limited by limbs, or life, limited by life. You are in such a condition that you cannot, you have to break the precept. And the opposite is unlimited, unlimited virtue. What is virtue that does not have gain as its limit? Someone does not, with gain as cause, with gain as condition, with gain as reason, even arouse the thought of transgressing a training precept. So this is just the opposite. Okay, now let us look at this section here. In the seventh dyad, all virtue subject to cankers is mundane. That not subject to cankers is supramundane. Herein the mundane brings about improvement in future becoming and is a prerequisite for the escape from becoming according as it is said. Discipline is for the purpose of restraint. Restraint is for the purpose of non-remorse. Non-remorse is for the purpose of gladdening. Gladdening is for the purpose of happiness. Happiness is for the purpose of tranquility. Tranquility is for the purpose of bliss. Bliss is for the purpose of concentration. Concentration is for the purpose of correct knowledge and vision. Correct knowledge and vision is for the purpose of dispassion. Dispassion is for the purpose of fading away of greed. Fading away is for the purpose of deliverance. Deliverance is for the purpose of knowledge and vision of deliverance. Knowledge and vision of deliverance is for the purpose of complete extinction of craving, etc. through not clinging. Talk has that purpose, counsel has that purpose, support has that purpose, giving ear has that purpose, that is to say, the liberation of the mind through not clinging. So this is the mundane virtue. Mundane virtue is explained in this way that this leads to liberation. So these are all just different steps, how one step leading to the other. Discipline is your virtue. It is for the purpose of restraint, samvara. Why you want to be disciplined? You want to guard your senses. Why do you want to guard your senses? So that you do not remorse, right? Why do you not want to remorse? When you do not remorse, you are happy. Gladdening means you are in a happy state. This happy state leads to further happiness. And then with such happiness, your mind becomes calm, tranquil. When your mind is calm, you are blissful. When you are blissful, you are fully concentrated. When you are concentrated, certain types of knowledge with regard to reality will arise in your mind, and that is how you progress in the path and you destroy the negative emotions and negative psychology, negative qualities such as craving and so on. So finally it leads to liberation of the mind through non-clinging. So that is the purpose of your mundane virtue. What about supramundane virtue? Supramundane virtues bring about the escape from becoming and is the plane of reviewing knowledge. So when you attain, for example, arahanthood, at that moment you go through this reviewing knowledge. This reviewing knowledge is with regard to Four Noble Truths. Let me check the phrase for reviewing knowledge here. Yeah, Paccavekkanayana, reviewing knowledge. Paccavekkanayana. There are 5 investigative knowledge for a noble disciple who is a stream enterer. And just as for the stream enterer, so is also for the once returner and the non-returner. So if there are 5 Paccavekkanayana, for Sotapanna, 5 for Sakatagami, 5 for Anagami. How many? 15. But for an Arahant, there is no investigation of the remaining defilements. Just as for the once return, non-returner, for an Arahant, there is no investigation of the remaining defilements. The remaining defilements is one of the 5. So that means the other 4 are present. Thus, altogether, there are 19 kinds of investigative knowledge. 4 for Arahant, right? Paccavekkhana Jnana. Yeah. Paccavekkhana Jnana. So, supramundane virtue refers to escaping from becoming and is the plane of reviewing knowledge. That means you are already in a state of arahanthood. So it is of 2 kinds, mundane and supramundane. So with this, the classification of virtue as twofold ends. And after that, it begins with